So let's have a look at how we structure the XML data for WebAudioXML. And we start off with this hello world example. I call it one node. It sounds straight away. Okay. So just to make one thing clear, in this example I have I've linked to the script that I have on a web server, and I am pointing the script towards an embedded XML data inside the HTML document. This is great for CodePen because you can do everything you want to do within just the HTML window. You could possibly find it useful on like Fiddle or other services like that. But if you build your own web page, you would rather have your script linked into, well, probably from a local folder in your project, like next to your HTML document, and you would probably have the XML data externally in an XML file rather than embedded in HTML. But it's, as I said, it's super handy to do it if you want to do some examples in CodePen that I found really useful when I work with students, because I can easily show an example and the students can fork my project and they can continue just changing the structure and try out features and changes themselves. Anyway, so just to understand how I link this, the data source attribute links to hashtag WebAudioXML, which is the ID of this XML element. So that's how it's connecting the script to the data. This very first example shows just a simple audio element in XML. The audio element is mandatory. It has to be there, and for an external XML data, XML file, that would be the root element. And if you embed it as I do here, that would be the sort of first element and the only element inside the XML kind of parent element. The way the audio element works is that it kind of collects everything that's inside it, and it connects the output of everything that's in it and connect that output to the main output from WebAudio, which means that everything we put in here we will hear. So if I put an OscillatorNode, for example, I will hear that OscillatorNode because the output of the OscillatorNode goes to the audio element, and that brings the audio to the speakers. So audio is an element that I came up with, whilst the OscillatorNode, that is a WebAudio API object type. And I have implemented quite a lot of the WebAudio elements, but not all of them yet. And you will find in the documentations on GitHub what elements are available at the moment. So if you create a WebAudio element like this OscillatorNode, you can set any properties of that WebAudio node using the attributes in XML. So if I use type equals square, for example, that sets the type property of the WebAudio OscillatorNode to square wave. And if we read the documentation from WebAudio, we know that we can set the frequency parameter as well, which we can do then with attributes here in XML. And attributes in XML is always strings, so they will be converted to numbers or whatever they have to be by my framework, the JavaScript file that I wrote. So you have to write it in strings all the time, even if it will be converted to numbers, as in this case with the frequency. So anyway, this is, if I turn on the sound, you will hear a square wave. If I change this to sine, Takes a few seconds and you hear the sine wave. If I change the frequency, it changes. There is one setting you can do on the audio element, and that would be the gain attribute. Gain is generally set in web audio using floating point numbers like 0.5, for example. That would be half power of standard gain value. That is useful, but many musicians and sound engineers refers to gain levels in terms of decibels, so I implemented that. So that was why I could write -20 decibel, and then that will go through all the maths to do the correct conversions to floating point numbers in web audio. And I think that's it for this tutorial, and please join me to the next one.